but you know it when you see it. And that's the same thing for man. It can't necessarily be defined and pinned down. Well, you have to be this. You have to be a father. You have to be married. You have to have this job. Yeah, maybe not. But you should be able to recognize it when you see it, those characteristics of that upright, strong, virile man. Gentlemen, what's going on? This is the Better Man channel, where we reject the degenerate state of modernity that we see society in, where there's some woman in California trying to convince her kids that they're part of the LGBT community. Did I get that right? It's sad that I now know all those letters, and I'm sure I don't even know. I'm sure some element of PQRSTUs were added overnight. Who knows? But we want to be part of a society where we see men go back to tradition. We want to see a return to tradition where man is man, a new tradition, if you will, where we stand up and say, this is the example that we need to follow. We're not handing out participation trophies anymore. We're going to be strong. We're going to teach you to not be weak. Remove all the BS, the ideologies that have been placed upon us. So the question becomes, what does it mean to be a man, right? And how do we become men? Well, we need examples. That's the easiest route to becoming something. You have to have an example. Think about when you do something new, you try something new. How do you kind of fall in line with what's going on? You follow the leader. There has to be a leader. And in a state where everybody's just kind of running amok and saying it means this, it means that, you can do this, be that, not this, not this. Where are we leading our young men these days? What are the up-and-coming generations going to believe? Do they have a foundation to build upon? And we see, as of now, no, not really. Lost, or men are lost. Young men are lost. Hell, old men are lost. We've seen generation after generation be pushed in this kind of socialistic, effeminate, emasculating culture where men are no longer men now. And so where are the leaders? What the hell does it even mean to be a good man? And I started thinking about this the other night. Me and my son, we were watching some videos on YouTube. He likes to get on there and watch. He's a big fan of OU football, so he's always watching about what players are coming, what players are leaving in this now football culture we live in, where they can get paid and seek this and transfer in and out. But anyway, that's another story. But somehow we got onto these Island Boys. If any of you are familiar with them, if you're not, I'm about to show a clip, but these young men, I'm assuming they're over 18, but this is what millions of young men and young women are watching, and they're just, one apple on this big tree of degenerate culture that we now live in. And again, I'm not hating on these young men for their hustle. Let them be whatever their brand is. I'm more worried about those that are being hustled and misled and led astray. But these young men are almost an example to a younger generation of, oh, well, that's what it means to be successful. That's what it means to be man. And in no way is there really any virtue. Is there any really masculine strength? Is there any real direction? And again, I'm not hating on these young men. They have their hustle. They are successful. What I'm worried about is how that's misleading other young men that are looking for examples, especially in a fatherless society. We have a lot of fathers that are absent in the home for many reasons and many varied reasons, but we have divorce rates and we have separation. We have all these reasons while some fathers aren't there, so a lot of young men are looking for examples. So we're going to go into this clip, show you an idea of kind of what society's looking at for examples of success, man, and we'll go from there.
And I've been trying to make, I'm an island boy. I'm just island boy. I'm just island boy. I'ma get key white going. You're gonna keep that gun. I'll be just staring at the sun. I'm just out full gazing. I'm like, pull where I'm staying. They're like, you wanna be famous? I'm trying to be out the greatest.
And yeah, so what does it mean to be a man? Well, and maybe that's not the question that a lot of young guys, when they're consuming content, are asking themselves, but subconsciously and kind of subliminally, this is just being poured on them. This is what it means to be a man. This is what it means to be successful. These are the traits you follow, and we wonder why our current state is as it is. Well, shit. Look at what we're being constantly fed through social media of what's actually right when it's not. So the question becomes, well, what is a good man? And there's many characteristics to that. And there's not necessarily a one size fits all. And it reminded me of Larry Flint. Yes, I know that it's speaking of degeneracy, but Larry Flint was the owner, founder of Hustler magazine. For any of you guys that don't know that, in the day of technology, before technology, if you wanted to look at some nudies, some nude pictures, you had to get an actual magazine. And Playboy and Hustler, I think Penthouse was one of those, but he was one of those kind of nude magazines guys, kind of a pioneer in that. And he got in a lot of trouble, and he was always in and out of court for, porn and sexual content. But he ended up going to Supreme Court, and there was one justice there that said, concerning porn, you can't really define it and set limitations on it. It's just something that you know when you see it, right? You can't just say, well, this is porn and this isn't, but you know it when you see it. And that's the same thing for man. It can't necessarily be defined and pinned down. Well, you have to be this. You have to be a father. You have to be married. You have to have this job. Maybe not. But you should be able to recognize it when you see it, those characteristics of that upright, strong, virile man that is responsible, that takes ownership of his life, that kind of goes against the grain if things don't fit in with his traditions, his values, his beliefs. He stands on his own 2 feet. So you can't just pin it down with one overarching definition, but you know it when you see it. And when I watch this video or any other videos of some young creators, I'm not seeing what it is to be a man. And so we have to think of my son, he's getting ready to turn 10. So we have all these young men that are watching this content, and they're looking for some mentors, and even fathers that are there. And I'm the first to admit this, that I'm not always providing him a direction. And that's something that I need to be more aware of, and more careful and more precise and concise in doing. This is what it means to be a man, not only by example, but to refresh that on a daily basis. And that's something that I try to implement, is asking him, hey, what's some characteristics that you did today that enabled you to be a good man? What'd you do good today? How were you strong? And I encourage him in that. But imagine even men that are in their children's life not necessarily doing that, and it's easy to just hand them this social media content to babysit them. And they're getting all this influence, this outside influences of what it means to be a man. And again, they may not be specifically saying, like the Island Boys, they're not saying this is what it means to be man, but they are physically men, and they're kind of influencing, hey, this is what we're doing, and so you should do it as well. And so there's this plethora of content out there that's, very decomposing the very nature of what it means to be man, of what it means to provide a traditional foundation that actually can sustain life, right? Again, I'm not hating on their hustle. I'm hating on the principles they're teaching all these impressionable young men that can easily be influenced and swayed by their content of what it means to be successful or man or lack of man. And so we have to be aware of this. What does it mean to be man? Are we even aware of it? Do we fall victim to, well, that guy's successful and he's a man, biologically speaking, so that's what it means to be man? And I think we get caught up in that. And that can go on both sides of the spectrum, man. We can follow some kind of complete chauvinistic asshole and think, well, that's what it means to be man. Or then we get into this modernity of life today where it's more effeminate. In order to be a man, you have to be effeminate. You have to be in tune with your feelings and always vulnerable. And I hate that word vulnerable. I get a lot of times where people are going with that, but I would like to see that replaced with open. Because I think what the majority of people are trying to say when they say be vulnerable is be open. Don't be afraid to share your feelings and how you feel, but don't be vulnerable. The very word vulnerable means weakness. Look it up. The definition is weakness. Now be open and then be ready to prepare and remedy the weakness that you have in your life, because yes, we all have weakness. Being vulnerable and saying, oh God, I have a hole in my defense. Come on, enemy, and come in here. I'm so vulnerable. That's not strong. That's not being a man. Be open and then prepare your... Oh, sorry for that tangent there, but we're talking about being a man. So being a man is about being open, but not being weak. But returning back to those examples, we all need examples. So if we're on that path to becoming better man, I don't care if you're 10, if you're 20, if you're 40, We all need an example, because it is by following that leader that we begin to emulate those characteristics that make us men. If we want to be a strong, virile, energetic, leading man, we're not going to be sitting there digesting 10 hours of Island Boy content. So here's the question. What content are you watching? What movies and shows are you watching? What books are you reading? What friends do you have? Are they enabling you and even pushing you and motivating you to encompass the characteristics of man? Or are they creating that soft, overweight, fat, whether literally or metaphorically, man that's not really doing anything to be better? We need men to be men so that our young boys and our young men can have something to emulate, that we can provide those examples where they say, okay, that's what it means to be strong, this and this and that. And again, there's a wide array of characteristics that we can embody. I'm a father. You may not be, so that doesn't apply to you. So there's not this one size fits all, but we should know it and recognize it when we see it. And I guarantee you, there's a lot of content creators. There's a lot of examples out there politically, in Hollywood, in our social media influencers. There's a lot of biological men that really have a big impact on this young generation, but they're not actually teaching them what it means to be man. We need to return to a new tradition, if you will, where men are masculine, men are strong. They teach you that it's not about participation trophy culture. It's about showing up, being strong, competing to rise that hierarchical rank that life does demand. I don't care how the soft woke culture wants to teach you. Life is hard, and we got to get harder if we want to be equipped to overcome it when life will expectedly and unexpectedly slap us in the face. So here's the question. What's your examples of man? Are you being an example of man? And how can we overcome the limitations of an effeminate culture, a degenerate culture that wants, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to see man and its very characteristics fail? I love you guys. You will hear from me next episode.